Hi, it's Helen, and I'm telling you now, when the phone rang at 3:07 a.m., I knew something had changed, not just in the air, not just in the silence, but in me. "Grandma," my grandson whispered, "don't tell anyone I called. I overheard them, and it's bad, really bad." My hand tightened around the edge of the bedsheet. I was fully awake now, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The house was dark, the kind of thick, middle-of-the-night dark that makes everything feel fragile. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, already shivering even though the room was warm. "What did you hear, sweetheart?" I asked, steady as I could, even though my voice felt like it was balancing on a wire. He hesitated. I could hear him breathing on the other end. Then finally he said, "They're talking about putting you in a home. Not because you're sick or anything. They don't want you around anymore." My stomach turned. I knew he meant his mother and father, my daughter and her husband. They'd been cold lately, less visits, shorter phone calls, always polite but always distant. I had chalked it up to stress, busyness, told myself not to take it personally. But now? "What else?" I said. "They said it'll be easier this way, that the sale of your house could help them with their mortgage, that you won't fight because you're too tired, too old." Too old. That one stung more than it should have. "I recorded part of it," he said, his voice shaking now. "I didn't mean to, I swear. I was just trying out the recorder app for a school project. I left it on the table. I didn't know they'd say all that." I could hear how guilty he felt. My sweet boy, 12 years old and already learning how heavy secrets can be. "It's not your fault," I whispered. "You did the right thing. Thank you for telling me." We stayed on the line for another minute, long enough for him to whisper, "I love you, Grandma," and for me to whisper it back. Then he hung up. I sat in the dark, the silence stretching like wire. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I reached for the notebook I keep beside my bed, the one with the leather cover and the faded ribbon bookmark. I opened it to a fresh page and wrote down the time, the date, and the words he had said. I wrote, "Don't tell anyone I called. I overheard their conversation. They're planning to take the house. They think I won't fight." Then I underlined one word 3 times, "fight," because that's what I was going to do. And I'd do it with the same quiet strength I've always had, the kind no one sees until it's too late. This was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. When dawn finally broke, it felt like it was arriving for someone else's day, not mine. I sat at the kitchen table with my chipped mug of tea going cold and my notebook open beside me. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept hearing his little voice. "They think you won't fight. They, my daughter, my only child, Meredith. It's a strange ache, the kind you don't know how to name, when your own blood begins to see you as an inconvenience, to be managed, rehomed, liquidated, like you're a piece of furniture in the wrong room. I'd seen the signs, hadn't I? Meredith had been pushing more and more lately about the bills, about the burden of upkeep, about the so-called strain of me living alone. Every visit came with a suggestion hidden in a smile. "Mom, you know, Meadow Pines has a lovely new wing. Independent living, they call it. You could still have your own space, just smaller. Just smaller." Like my life was a suitcase she needed to zip shut, and her husband, Nathan, well, he was the one I never quite trusted. Not really. Polite, yes. Charming at holidays. But I'd seen the way his eyes always scanned the house, not with nostalgia, not with affection, but with interest, as if he were measuring the walls for resale. I wasn't imagining it. Now I knew. I pulled out the old manila folder I'd kept for years in the drawer under the stairs. Not because I thought I'd need it, not really, but because I'd spent a lifetime learning that people forget things, and I don't. Inside were the original deeds, my will, the copy of the trust I set up after George died. Even the hand-signed agreement Meredith made when she borrowed from me to start that boutique years ago. A temporary loan, she had called it. She never paid it back. She didn't even mention it again. And I had let her, because I was her mother. But this house, this home, was mine. George and I had built it room by room over 42 years of love and hard seasons. I had papered that kitchen wall myself during a blizzard in '84, refinished the floors when my knees still cooperated, buried 2 cats and 1 dog in the garden out back. This place carried my breath in its bones. And now? She wanted to use it like a pawn. I flipped open the notebook again. This time I started a list. Steps to protect the house call. Andrew Levin, our old family attorney, first thing Monday, get security camera quotes for all entrances. Speak with Michael from next door. He used to work in real estate. Go to the bank, change power of attorney if needed. Make copies of the recording, store off-site. My hand was steady. It felt good. The planning, the structure. It was a familiar rhythm, survival. I had survived being widowed. I had survived cancer. I had survived my body turning on me in little ways each year, my hands aching in the mornings, my knees stiffening when I climbed the porch steps. I had survived being forgotten in a room full of people who loved me but no longer saw me. But this was different. This wasn't about endurance. This was about drawing a line. That afternoon I called Andrew. The moment he picked up and heard my voice, he said, "Helen, what's going on?" I didn't hesitate. "I think my daughter's planning to steal my house." There was silence on the line. Then he said quietly, "Come in tomorrow morning. Bring everything." I made another list. I underlined my grandson's name. I made tea again. This time I drank it hot. And that night, I slept with the recorder file saved to 3 places: my laptop, a USB drive hidden under the sink, and an email to myself titled "Just in Case." I was no longer afraid. Not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But because I finally understood. They hadn't counted on me still having a spine. They saw a grandmother. They forgot I was a mother first. It was the way Andrew looked at me that told me everything. He didn't pity me. He didn't treat me like I was fragile. He looked at me like someone who knew exactly what I'd been holding back. I sat in his office, sunlight spilling across the polished wood desk, my file open between us. The recording, the one my grandson had made, played softly from his computer speaker. "You know she won't resist," Nathan's voice said, low and smug. "She's tired. She won't even understand what's happening until we've moved her out. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her as long as Meredith's the one asking." Andrew paused it. Then he sat back in his chair, expression tight. "That's enough." I nodded, fingers clenched in my lap. "They're preparing to push me out," I said calmly. "Under the guise of concern, of course, what's best for Mom. But it's not about care. It's about convenience and money." He nodded slowly. "You're right. They're setting you up. That kind of language, it's premeditated. And if you hadn't known about it, if your grandson hadn't warned you—" "I would have walked right into it," I said. We went through the documents I'd brought. He made a copy of everything: the trust, the deed, the note from Meredith's loan, the updated will from 2017, the one I'd done quietly after the cancer scare. When he got to the trust, he frowned. "You still have her listed as successor trustee," he said carefully. "If something were to happen, God forbid, she would have full control." I nodded. "Fix it." He smiled. "I already am. When I got home that afternoon, I sat on the porch in the cold and watched the sky shift from pale blue to rose gray. My bones ached, not from age, from something deeper. Disappointment has a weight to it. It settles into the marrow. I thought about Meredith when she was a little girl, how she used to slip her hand into mine when she was scared, the first time she scraped her knee, the time George yelled too loud during a storm and she ran to me, clutching her stuffed bear. She used to trust me like I was a lighthouse. When did that change? Maybe the change wasn't sudden. Maybe it crept in like a slow tide. The first time she decided I needed help with the bills. The first time she moved things in my kitchen without asking. The time she insisted on handling my prescriptions because the labels were too confusing. Every little thing was kindness at first, until it wasn't, until it became control, until I became someone to manage. I stared at the house across the street, their house, Meredith and Nathan's, 4 bedrooms, oversized windows, an SUV in the driveway I helped co-sign. I knew the numbers, knew they were over-leveraged. Nathan's business had lost 2 clients last year. Meredith's boutique had closed months ago, quietly, no fanfare. They were desperate, and I had something they wanted. The next morning, Meredith called. "Mom," she said, her voice syrupy, "can we stop by this weekend, just to catch up?" I smiled. Of course. My hands were already flipping through my notebook. It was time. Not to expose them. Not yet. It was time to watch. Because the thing about people like Nathan, the ones who think they've already won, is they get sloppy when they think you're still asleep, and I was wide awake. They came on Sunday, just after church, like it was any other weekend. Meredith brought tulips. Nathan brought that fake smile he always wore like cologne. It didn't reach his eyes. I had baked banana bread, not because I was feeling hospitable, because I wanted them comfortable. I wanted them to forget I was listening. They didn't ask about my health. They didn't ask if I was lonely or warm enough, or if the new heating unit, the one I paid for myself, was working. Meredith just talked about stress, about big decisions, and how sometimes hard conversations are acts of love. I nodded, offered tea. Then Nathan cleared his throat. "Your house," he said, setting his cup down carefully, "is just a lot for you, isn't it? The upkeep, the cost." "I manage," I said. Meredith reached for my hand, her nails perfect and pink. "Mom, we've found a place. It's not a home. It's beautiful. They call it active living. You'd have your own kitchenette. You'd be surrounded by people your age. It's so charming, right by the lake." "Charming," I repeated. "Is that what they call selling someone's life behind their back now?" She froze. I let my voice soften. "Sweetheart, why don't you tell me what's really going on?" She blinked. Then Nathan sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Look, Helen, it's not sustainable for you to live here. You've got more house than you need, and frankly, it would help everyone if we could free up some equity. Meredith and I have been carrying a lot lately. We'd like to move closer. If this house was available, we could finally—" I held up a hand. "Let me be very clear," I said, voice even. "This house is mine. It will remain mine, until I decide otherwise." Meredith tried again. "Mom, we're not trying to hurt you. You already have," I said. The silence crackled. I stood slowly. The banana bread sat untouched. "You can leave now." Nathan blinked. "Excuse me?" I said leave, and don't come back until you're ready to speak to me as my daughter and not a real estate agent. Meredith's face crumpled, but I didn't flinch, because underneath the shock, the nervous glances, the fidgeting, I saw fear. They had been counting on me to fold. They thought I'd surrender because I always had before, but I wasn't her soft-spoken, grateful mother anymore. I was the woman who once rebuilt her marriage with her own hands, who taught herself how to manage every account after George passed, who remembered exactly where every dollar went, and who knew that love without respect is not love at all. They left without slamming the door, but they left fast. And 2 hours later, my neighbor Michael called. "Hey, Helen," he said, hesitation in his voice. "You didn't authorize anyone to pull title on your house, did you?" My blood ran cold. "No," I said. "Why?" "Because someone did. Last week." My hands clenched into fists. So that was the game now. They weren't asking anymore. They were starting. I moved fast. The next morning I was in Andrew's office before the receptionist finished her coffee. I handed him the printout from Michael, the title inquiry, and he barely glanced at it before saying, "Then we escalate." He filed the emergency freeze that afternoon, a legal block on any attempted title transfer, refinancing, or encumbrance. It meant nothing could happen to my house, not legally, without my explicit written notarized approval. They had underestimated me. Again. That same evening, I got a call from the one person I hadn't expected. My grandson, the one who'd called in the night, the one who'd heard the truth before I did. "Grandma," he said, voice small, "they know I told you. They found the recording app on my phone." I closed my eyes. "Are you all right?" There was a long pause. "They're mad. Not yelling mad, but quiet mad. Like the scary kind." My heart ached. "You did the right thing. Do you hear me? I'm proud of you." He sniffled. "Dad said I betrayed the family." I nearly dropped the phone. "No," I said fiercely. "You protected it. There's a difference." I wanted to drive over right then. I wanted to put my arms around that boy and tell him the world wasn't as cruel as it sometimes seemed. But I also knew he was already learning otherwise. When I hung up, I sat very still. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't interested in court battles or drama. What I wanted, what I needed, was to make sure they couldn't hurt me again. Not legally, not emotionally, not through my grandson. So I wrote a new will. I removed Meredith as my executor. I wrote a letter to my grandson, sealed it, and left it with Andrew, to be given to him when he turns 18. Inside was the truth, simple and plain, no bitterness, just clarity, and a reminder that one act of courage, even whispered at 3 a.m., can save a life. I also made copies of the title inquiry. I filed them alongside the fake admission documents Meredith had once tried to sneak past me, glossy brochures for that so-called active living facility, complete with pricing breakdowns and a reserved unit in my name. They hadn't even asked. They were going to move me and take the house. I stared at the documents late into the night. All of it felt surreal, like watching someone else's betrayal in a slow-motion dream. But the deepest wound, it wasn't the paperwork. It was the realization that Meredith had once been a girl who used to braid my hair while I read to her on the porch, that she used to fall asleep against my shoulder on long drives, that when she was 15, she wrote in her journal that I was her hero, and now she was plotting to sell the roof over my head. That night, I wrote in my notebook, the same one where I kept track of pain and planning. "They cannot erase me if I refuse to disappear." I underlined it twice. Then I took one more step. I called Channel 9. I asked to speak with their senior rights reporter, a woman I'd seen cover elder fraud cases before. I didn't give my name, not yet, but I gave them the story, and they listened. Because this wasn't just about my house anymore. This was about how too many women like me get swept aside the moment they stop being useful. And I was done being quiet. They didn't knock this time. They barged in. It was 2 days after I'd spoken to the reporter. I was sitting on the porch, my notebook in my lap, when Meredith's car skidded into the driveway. Nathan climbed out first, mouth already moving, but I didn't catch a word, not at first. I was too focused on her face. She looked like a woman cornered. "Mom," Meredith said, sharp and breathless, "what the hell are you doing?" I stood slowly. "You'll need to be more specific." "The bank called," Nathan snapped. "You froze the title. You revoked her power of attorney. You hired a lawyer. What is all this?" I looked at them both, my daughter with her lips pressed so tight they'd gone white, and her husband, red-faced and trembling, like he'd been caught robbing a church. "It's me," I said, "protecting myself, since no one else will." Meredith blinked fast. "You think we were trying to hurt you?" "I know you were," I said gently. She stared at me, shocked. "We were helping. That house is too much for you. It's falling apart. It's old." "So am I," said. "But I'm not dead, and I don't belong in a brochure." Nathan stepped closer. "Do you have any idea how hard it's been lately? We're drowning. We have bills. We were just trying to rescue yourselves," I finished, "at my expense." I took a deep breath. "You told a 12-year-old that he betrayed you. You told him he should have stayed silent. I don't know who taught you that silence is loyalty, but it wasn't me." Meredith swallowed hard. Her eyes were glossy now. "He didn't understand. He's just a kid." "No," I said. "He's a child with a conscience. You should try borrowing that sometime." The words landed like bricks. Nathan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Then Meredith did something I didn't expect. She sat down, right there, on the edge of the porch, her hands in her lap, small again, like she used to be when her heart was broken. "I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. I sat beside her, leaving space between us. "But you let it." She nodded, staring at her hands. "We were scared. Nathan lost the last contract. The boutique failed. We needed help." "You wanted a solution," I said softly. "Not help. There's a difference." "I didn't want to hurt you," she said again, tears finally spilling. "I know," I said, "but you did." We sat there in silence for a long while. Nathan stood awkwardly at the bottom of the steps like a man halfway evicted from a dream. "I'm not pressing charges," I said after a while, "but if you or Nathan try to touch one more piece of paperwork with my name on it, if I get one more surprise from the bank, or an inquiry from a broker, or even a whiff of manipulation, I will." Meredith nodded. "And the boy?" I asked, turning to her. "You're going to apologize to him properly, not just a hug and a cookie. You're going to tell him he did the right thing, that telling the truth is never betrayal." She nodded again. "I will." I believed her, not because she was crying, but because I remembered the girl she used to be, the one who once spent all her allowance on a birthday gift for a classmate who didn't have anyone come to his party, the one who, deep down, still existed under all that desperation. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't trust you, not yet." Meredith closed her eyes. That hurt her more than anything else, and I let it, because pain teaches us what words can't. Later, after they left, the house felt still, but not the lonely kind, the solid kind, like something that had been shaken and finally steadied. That night, I lit a candle for my grandson, for his bravery. And I wrote in my journal one last time, "When people try to erase you, you don't yell. You draw a sharper outline." In the months that followed, I started small. A workshop at the community center. Elder rights, knowing your worth. Mostly women, some men. All of them tired of being talked over. And one afternoon, as I packed up my notes, a girl from the front row came over, 19, maybe 20, and said, "I called my grandma after your talk. I hadn't in weeks. I forgot how much she mattered." I nodded, smiled, and felt something gentle settle in my chest. My legacy wouldn't be the house, it would be the truth I refused to bury,